Hi, I'm Terrance McNally here at Bioneers 2011, and with me right now is Atossa Soltani. Hi, Atossa.
Hi, Terrance.
And Atossa is the founder and executive director of Amazon Watch, a nonprofit founded in '96 to protect the rainforest and advance the rights of indigenous peoples in the Amazon basin by partnering with indigenous and environmental organizations in campaigns for human rights, corporate responsibility and accountability, and the preservation of ecosystems. Before Amazon Watch, Atossa directed campaigns at the Rainforest Action Network, and she began her environmental career in the late '80s as conservation director for the city of Santa Monica. And you must have been in junior high at the time. You started working in, it's interesting, what I noticed was, started working in city government and in a small city of 100,000. And now, with Amazon Watch, it's a global thing. How have you, your perspective and what calls you, how has that evolved over the years?
Well, I first learned about the rainforest in my first year in college. I think I was 17, and my college roommate was a biologist studying conservation biology, and she was Peruvian, and she'd traveled to the Amazon. So I started thinking about the Amazon from my very first year in college and learned about the problems there and couldn't ever stop thinking about it. It was in my dreams, it was in my, everything I could read about it, and it was a time when people really didn't understand the problem. And so, ever since then, it was like in the back of my mind, like, what can I do with this issue? And of course, my passion was, as I was always an activist, and my first job with the city of Santa Monica had to do with energy and water conservation. And so I got to dream up ideas of how we can use resources efficiently, and the city council would go.
Yeah, Santa Monica is,
so it was a great
pretty,
place.
I mean, for people that don't know,
very
it's like this wonderful little sustainable place that does so many things right.
So they rewarded me for having an imagination. They believed in me when I would come forth with analysis and ideas and visions. And I think at a young age, I was having a lot of success.
Yeah.
At 21, I was awarded the Employee of the Year, and I had, by the time I was 25, I think I had, a $2 million budget and 10 people on staff, and we were replacing a third of the fixtures in the city and installing landscaping that was water efficient. And I thought, God, if I could, I've learned so much here, and if I could just apply this to what's really my passion, if I could really take the PR, the program design, the policy analysis, the efficiency, resource conservation, and building an alternative vision for sustainability. If I could deliver all that at the global scale, I could have a huge impact. So it was, and then I met Randy Hayes, and I said, Randy, I really can't wait to help protect the rainforest. What do you suggest? He's like, you're too late. You got to start now. And so, literally, I went home that week and started a rainforest action group. And started.
While you were still employed?
Yes. And so every other Friday, the city was closed for commuting time.
Right.
I would make my whole staff come and volunteer for the Rainforest Action Network, and we would do campaigns. We would write letters to governments. We would organize protests. We started the Mitsubishi boycott. And so that kind of gave me a lot of excitement about, it was my passion. And so gradually I went to the Earth Summit and started working with the Rainforest Action Network for a 3-month contract. I left my good paying job to take a leap into the void and do rainforest work, and I never stopped. It was one thing after another, and everything's been always signaling that I'm on the right path, and the things that we're doing are in great service, and there's great need, and I just have to listen to the people in the communities on the ground and bring together allies who really want to make a difference, and I think it's been exciting ever since.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting what you said about that it was in your dreams, and I mean, just how people, in other words, I'd say you were lucky to have something that called you so much.
Yeah, I think, I literally think that I truly think I was called, whether it's the frequency of the forest, or I was just literally attracted to this place and this issue.
Yeah. Let me ask one thing. I know that Atossa Soltani, you're of Iranian extraction, and here you are, an activist in the Amazon.
Right.
What has it been like for you to watch what's happened in the Middle East this year with the awakening there?
Well, yeah, it's I grew up in the revolution. When I lived in Iran, it was
Okay, I wasn't sure
I
of that.
literally left Iran a few weeks before the revolution.
So
I
this
got
is
to
78,
see.
79.
Yeah, I left in end of '78, and I saw the buildup of the revolution. In a short period of time, the country ignited into and toppled, the monarchy, and so I got to see change can be ignited. Change is possible, and people power is possible. I think that's part of my DNA. But then, of course, it's been tragic to watch the oppression and the wars in that part of the world and feel that, as a woman living in the U.S., there's not a whole lot I can do. But with watching the latest situation in the Middle East, in Tunisia and Egypt and even Iran after the last elections, it's been, the generation that's in, the majority of the population of these countries are young people. They're getting online, they're getting on social media, and they're finding new power, and they're finding that, democracy is unstoppable, and, people power is like the genie's been let out of the bottle.
Which is such a great image for that
For
part of the
that
country.
part of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the feminine, and the other great thing about that is like
yes.
the genie is the feminine,
Yeah.
it's the divine feminine.
Yeah. What specifically does Amazon Watch do? Because there's a lot of organizations that have a little piece of the puzzle. What is it that you do?
Well, the Amazon is the size of the continental United States. It's a big place, 9 countries. Our work has been focused in partnership with indigenous peoples in the front lines in areas threatened by large-scale resource extraction. We work in long-term partnerships with indigenous communities in campaigns that are really about empowering them to defend their territories and their rights, but also taking those campaigns back into international arena and targeting the corporations, the banks, the governments who are perpetrating the destruction of the forest, and being able to mobilize people who care, communities of celebrities, of activists, of environmentalists, of scientists, of investors, and really creating a force for change in support and in alliance and in partnership with local communities. So our work has really been focused in many parts of the Amazon over the last 15 years, but currently in Ecuador, Peru, Colombia, and Brazil. And we are taking on a lot of dirty energy projects. So oil and gas extraction and large dams are 2 of the things that we're really focused on.
What have been some of your successes?
Well, we've been working on I would say these are milestones. We are reaching milestones. We worked with the Uwa people of Colombia over a course of 7 years. We still work with them. We're still in partnership in a campaign that eventually succeeded in forcing Occidental Petroleum to abandon plans to drill for oil.
That was a huge one. That was the one where the Uwa actually said they were going to commit suicide?
That's right. That's right, and it was, it was a really incredible campaign because the Uwa had said they were willing to die defending what's sacred, rather than succumb to the destruction of their ancestral territory. It was a violation of their natural laws. They touched on a lot of issues that people think about. Most recently, and we continue to partner with them in other threats. Oxy's gone, but there are other threats, and these are long-term partnerships where we really are standing in solidarity and support with communities who are visionary. They are connected to the land. They are the defense mechanism of the land, and they are, they see their own future tied to the future of the territory and the health of their territory, like as we all should. They have wisdom. They really have wisdom to share with the rest of us. Most recently, I'm excited about a campaign. It was a lawsuit against Chevron. And I've been working on it since when I was at Rainforest Action Network, and then since Amazon Watch has been working on it for over 10 years. And this year, the court in Ecuador finally ruled that Chevron was guilty, and that
and just so people know,
guilty of large-scale environmental contamination of the Ecuadorian Amazon.
And responsible for cleaning it up.
Responsible for cleaning it up, and it issued them to pay $9.5 billion in damages.
Now, I assume that immediately they rush into court to appeal that. Where does that stand?
It's been appealed, and we are expecting a decision sometime in the next year on that appeal. And both sides have appealed that the plaintiffs, the communities who are affected by this destruction have said this is not enough, and there's groundwater that's destroyed, area 3 times the size of Manhattan that's devastated, and 2.5 million acres of rainforest. There's been indigenous lives lost.
So they're saying $9 billion is enough, and I just assume Chevron is saying that's outrageous.
Well, Chevron is basically doing everything it can to evade responsibility, but they've been issued some really serious setbacks. It's been an incredibly, ugly battle where Chevron's come. First the case was filed here. They said for 10 years the case should be heard in Ecuador. The case went to Ecuador. They lost the case in Ecuador. Now they're back here trying to.
It should have never been in Ecuador.
Yeah, it's saying the Ecuador courts are fraudulent. So they've done everything they can, and just dirty politics and dirty PR ploys to evade responsibility, but it's not really working. They're losing in the courts. Most recently, they're losing with their largest shareholders. City of New York, State of New York, many large pension funds who are large shareholders of Chevron are asking the company to settle, and this is becoming
to stop fighting it.
Yeah, because they're saying Chevron is basically destroying its own ability to have a social license to operate, not just in Ecuador, but in Australia. This week, Australian News Night did a huge story basically saying, should we trust Chevron with drilling in our sensitive ecosystems here? And should we trust them? Should we let them drill offshore in Australia? And it's basically causing the company reputational capital loss, and it's also something that I'm sure affecting employee morale. I mean, can you imagine being a Chevron employee who's fighting on the side of, who's fighting justice, who's fighting people who are dying of cancer and birth defects, and the issue is very clear-cut.
How does the fact that Ecuador enshrined in their constitution the rights of nature, and Bolivia as well, how has that affected your work?
Well, we were very active in the time of the constitutional reform to push for great policies, including the rights of nature, and also this initiative to keep the oil that's beneath the Yasuni National Park in the ground in exchange for compensation of some of the lost revenues, where Ecuador would say, instead of selling the oil, we will forgo drilling this large reserve, and in exchange, international donations would cover some of our lost revenue. So the global community would pay for us to conserve our rainforest and keep 1 billion gallons of oil
They
underground.
would pay whom? They would pay Ecuador? Or
yeah, it would be a trust fund that Ecuador would use to invest in things like getting beyond petroleum, moving their economy beyond oil. So it's a very revolutionary idea. So I think the current government came in with a lot of great ideas that came from civil society, that came from the nonprofit sector in Ecuador. And it's been really exciting to get behind it. Of course, there's no regulations yet. There's no enforcement. We're not seeing, like this fall, the Ecuadorian government is moving ahead to auction off 10 new oil blocks in the Ecuadorian Amazon. In opposition, communities are opposed to this plan, and it would affect a huge area. The rest of the Ecuadorian Amazon that's pristine, that hasn't been destroyed in oil development over the last 35 years.
How do they square that with the rights of nature?
I mean, they simply can't square it with the rights of nature. They're doing it because it's just the way that they're still, the system is created in the way that it's currently created. And so it's a huge contradiction.
Yeah.
It could be a source of embarrassment for President Correa, who's running for election, he's up for re-election next year. And I think that it's really, we have to not just sit on our, laurels and expect a rights of nature statement is going to save the day. We've got to keep fighting, and these battles come back over and over, and there's really never a permanent victory until we shift our consciousness, our value systems, our global economy.
Yeah, and we stop figuring the money that can be made from extraction is always worth it.
That's right, and these forests are more valuable for
I was going to ask you a couple of things about the forest. It's obviously Amazon rainforest has been an issue since, as you said, you first got introduced to it in the 80s. But a couple of things just to refresh people's memories. Global deforestation contributes 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions. How is that? Is it from burning? How does deforestation create gas emissions?
Well, every tree is half carbon. So when a tree is destroyed, burned, or decomposes, that releases that carbon into the atmosphere.
So it doesn't matter how it happens.
Tropical deforestation.
When it stops growing, it starts
decomposing
and starts letting off emissions.
That's right.
Okay.
And it can be through burning, which is a rapid loss, or it could be soil. The soil contains a lot of carbon. Vegetation, large dams create methane. They're methane factories, and methane is a global warming gas. That's 25 times more potent than CO2. And so when you have large dams that flood huge areas of the Amazon, you have literally as much, emissions, megawatt for megawatt as much as a coal power plant.
Wow.
In terms of how much a dam in the tropics can generate in terms of methane emissions.
So anything we can do to stop deforestation is good.
That's right. And what's contributing to deforestation mostly is industrial resource extraction, industrial agriculture, large-scale cattle ranching, soy plantations, palm oil, logging, oil, mining, large dams.
So how do we make the forest worth more standing than cut down?
Well, we have to recognize that for example, the Amazon is like the right lung and the Congo the left lung. The rainforests are the lungs of the earth. But more than that, more than the lungs of the earth and responsible for 20% of the world's oxygen, they are responsible for regulating the global climate. In fact, the Amazon is the largest rainforest in the world. So imagine all of that vapor and moisture that every day those trees are lifting up into the atmosphere. It makes the Amazon the engine of the global weather machine. Vapor, heat, moisture, all of that is pumped into the atmosphere and carried across the planet through the atmospheric circulation systems that literally take the rainfall. More than half of the rainfall that is created over the Amazon falls elsewhere. Elsewhere on the continent of South America, elsewhere in North America, in Central America, all over the world. In fact, the conveyor system that is the Amazon literally takes, is the engine of the global weather machine. It's the heartbeat. It's the heart.
So it's not
pump.
just the lungs,
it's the heart.
Okay. Let me ask you just a couple of final questions. One is, it seems to me the thing that links anyone to Bioneers and has them, say, yeah, I'm a Bioneer, is that they learn from natural systems.
That's
they
right.
actually learn from natural systems and then attempt to live with the reality that we're part of nature.
That's right.
How does that thread weave through your work?
That's a good question. I mean, when I think about the tropical rainforest, the most biodiverse place on Earth and culturally diverse place on Earth. And that's no accident. Where there is cultural diversity, the most cultural diversity and where there's most biodiversity are the same places. So it's not that, so really what this is about diversity and symbiosis and harmony and balance. And so where you have the ability to live in small scale systems that are self-reliant, where there's an interweave between the culture, the people, and their way of life and their local environment, you actually increase diversity. You create thriving ecosystems, productive, thriving ecosystems that are in balance with one another. It's something that we have to look at. It's not just about saying nature, mimic nature in this, in terms of a wildlife or it's a single species. It's saying an ecosystem function that human culture, and all the other species are self-reinforcing, creating vitality and thriving ecosystems. So we have to look at that and say, well, how are they doing that? How are the indigenous populations of the Amazon creating diverse biological diversity?
And so what you're saying is that what you are defending is where, in some senses, human life most is in tune with nature.
That's right.
And that's what you're defending.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, not only in tune with it, not only living sustainably, sustainability and status, sustainability is a concept of maintaining the same steady state. But in the Amazon over the last millions, tens of thousands of years, human populations actually increased productivity, increased diversity, all the way until the colonizers arrived, and everything's gone the other way quickly.
Right. And finally, I believe that story is the powerful way to reach people and engage people and so on. What are some of the stories you're telling these days?
Well, one of the things I'm most inspired by is, actually I learned about it when Sting was making the rainforest popular way back in the 80s, late 80s. There was this dam that was going to be built by the World Bank on the Xingu River in the Brazilian Amazon. And it was something that, indigenous peoples had a gathering and then met up with people like Sting, who took the cause internationally, fought the World Bank, stopped the loan, stopped the financing, and stopped this dam. It was one of the most inspiring stories. I remember, the chiefs from the Kaipo on tour with Sting.
I remember meeting them myself.
Well, this dam has resurfaced, and
my
it is like literally it would be the third largest dam in the world. It's a huge, monstrous project. It is no longer dependent on the World Bank. It's being financed by the Brazilian government. The communities are literally very opposed to the dam and are very much, resisting and saying that they're, there's some 9 indigenous communities that are directly affected, but 25 different indigenous ethnicities depend on the Xingu River for their survival. And you have fish species that travel 1,000 miles up the Xingu. They're migratory species. And so you're not going to be able to get them past the dam. So these migratory species are sacred and important to the food systems of the Upper Xingu. So you have 25 tribes who are opposed to this dam. It's it's one of the most defining battles going on in the Amazon now. And it's something that, I was able to meet, I saw in the movie Avatar, and I was like, wow, that's just like our work.
Like, of course.
So I found an event where James Cameron was at in LA, and I went to him and I said, great movie, and your work is, your movie is a parallel of what's happening in the Amazon. To my surprise, he was like, I was looking to meet someone like you, and I'm, very interested in this issue, and tell me more. And so a few weeks later, we were in the Xingu, on the river. He's been down there 3 times. He's gotten very involved in this issue, and we made a 20-minute documentary about this that's on every Avatar extended edition DVD. And it's called A Message from Pandora. And we're making, we're doing a huge campaign. It's kind of the last stand for the Xingu. If we can't fight this dam, there's 60 additional large dams the current president of Brazil wants to build in the Amazon. And there are alternatives. We don't need, and this is my background, energy efficiency alternatives. I know I've looked at tons of statistics and tons of research. There are alternatives. This dam is unnecessary, and it would cause significant impact on the largest mosaic of protected areas in Brazil and indigenous territories. It has to be stopped. It is the final hour, and it's something that my organization is devoting a lot of time and energy, as are hundreds of groups in Brazil and many celebrities, Brazilian and elsewhere. So, I think it's one of those battles. We have to take a stand. We have to fight.
So if someone wants to learn more about that, they just
go to Amazon Watch. And in fact, we'll give anyone this DVD of Message from Pandora to have a house party to learn about it and to join the causes and help stand with the people of the Xingu who are going to take a real strong, at personal risk to themselves, take a stand to save this place and and really shift Brazil's energy path.
Very good. And as you said, save this place for all of us.
That's right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.